Every weekend across America, millions of people fire up the mower, stuff the clippings into a bag, and haul them to the curb like garbage. But here's the thing. You're tossing out one of the most powerful free tools your garden will ever get. That single bag can quietly fix problems you've been fighting for years, silently, for free, while you're not even looking. Today, I'm giving you 13 of them. Let's dig in. Number 1. Weeds that won't quit. If there's one battle every gardener knows too well, it's the endless war against weeds. You pull them, you spray them, you curse them, and 2 weeks later, they're back like they never left. But here's a secret most people never learn. Weed seeds are lazy. The vast majority of them need direct sunlight hitting the soil in order to wake up and germinate. Cut off that light, and they simply stay asleep. That's exactly what a layer of grass clippings does. When you spread clippings across the surface of your beds, you create a living blanket that blocks the sun from ever reaching those buried seeds. No light means no sprouting, and no sprouting means you spend your weekends relaxing instead of yanking dandelions out of the dirt. The trick is to keep it thin. Apply the clippings in light layers, no more than an inch at a time, and let each layer dry before adding the next. A few of these thin, dry layers stacked over the growing season will stop weed seeds from germinating almost entirely. And unlike plastic landscape fabric, this barrier eventually breaks down and feeds your soil instead of leaving microplastics behind. So the very thing you were throwing away turns out to be a free, self-renewing weed barrier that gets better the more you mow. Number 2, soil that dries out overnight. We've all been there. You water your garden deeply in the evening, feeling like a responsible plant parent, and by the next afternoon, the soil is bone dry and cracking again. In the heat of summer, bare soil loses moisture at a shocking rate, and you end up chained to the garden hose just to keep your plants alive. Grass clippings put an end to that, acting as what soil scientists call a micro-mulch. A layer of clippings shades the surface of the soil and dramatically slows down evaporation. The water you put into the ground actually stays in the ground, right where the roots can drink it, instead of steaming off into the summer air. And this isn't a small effect. Research from Extension Services has shown that mulching the soil surface can cut water evaporation by roughly half. Think about that. You could potentially cut your watering in half just by recycling something you were already going to throw away. That's less time dragging hoses around, a lower water bill, and plants that don't go into shock every time you skip a day. There's a bonus here too. That steady, stable moisture doesn't just save water, it keeps your plants from riding a stressful roller coaster of soggy, then dry, then soggy soil. And as you'll see in a minute, that stability quietly solves one of the most heartbreaking problems in the whole vegetable garden. Number 3, fertilizer bills that keep climbing. Walk into any garden center and look at the price of a bag of fertilizer these days. It's enough to make you wince. And the frustrating part is that you're literally growing free fertilizer in your front yard every single week. Fresh grass clippings are surprisingly rich in nutrients. They contain around 4% nitrogen, the exact nutrient plants crave most for lush, green, leafy growth, along with a healthy dose of potassium and phosphorus. Nitrogen is one of the main ingredients you're paying for in those expensive bags, and your lawn is churning it out for nothing. When you let clippings break down on the soil, whether on the lawn itself or around your garden plants, they slowly release those nutrients right back into the earth. Studies on this practice have found it can reduce your fertilizing needs by as much as 25%. That's a full quarter of your fertilizer budget gone just by not bagging your grass. One important note before you get carried away: only use clippings from a lawn that hasn't been treated with weed killers or chemical pesticides. Those chemicals can travel right into your garden soil and harm the very plants you're trying to feed. But if your lawn is clean and untreated, you've essentially got a slow-release fertilizer factory running in your yard, and it fires up every time you mow. Number 4, Blossom end rot ruining your tomatoes. This one is heartbreaking, and it fixes a problem almost nobody connects to grass clippings. You've babied your tomato plants for months, the fruit is finally forming, and then you flip one over and find an ugly, black, sunken, leathery scar on the bottom. That's blossom end rot, and it also strikes peppers, squash, and cucumbers. Here's what most people get wrong about it. They assume it means their soil is missing calcium and start dumping crushed eggshells and calcium sprays everywhere. But the truth, confirmed by university horticulturists, is that most garden soil already has plenty of calcium. The real culprit is usually wild swings in soil moisture, that soggy then bone-dry roller coaster we talked about earlier. When the soil dries out, the plant can't move calcium into the developing fruit, and the bottom rots. So what actually stops it? Consistent moisture, and that is exactly what a layer of grass clippings delivers. By blanketing the soil and slowing evaporation, the clippings keep moisture steady and even, smoothing out those damaging wet-dry cycles that trigger the rot in the first place. In fact, gardeners who mulch their tomatoes and peppers report that blossom end rot almost never shows up. You're not adding a single nutrient here, you're just giving the plant the stable. Even watering it needs to feed itself properly. One free bag of clippings and a season-ruining problem quietly disappears. Number 5, disease splashing up from the soil. Ever notice how tomato diseases almost always start on the lowest leaves and work their way up? That's not a coincidence, and once you understand why, you'll never look at bare soil the same way again. Nasty fungal diseases like early blight and septoria leaf spot spend the winter lurking in the soil, waiting. Then, every time it rains or you water from above, those water droplets slam into the bare dirt and blast microscopic disease spores up into the air, landing them right on the underside of your plant's lowest leaves. From there, the infection climbs. It's basically a splash-powered delivery system for plant disease. A layer of grass clippings shuts that system down. The mulch acts as a physical shield between the contaminated soil and your plant's foliage. When rain hits the clippings instead of bare ground, the impact is absorbed, and those spores never get launched skyward in the first place. Extension experts specifically recommend a good mulch layer to break this transmission cycle. Gardeners who mulch see it play out clearly. In wet, muggy weather, the mulched plants keep clean lower stems, while the bare soil plants right next to them are speckled with the first spots of blight within a few weeks. So beyond feeding and watering, that humble bag of clippings is standing guard as a disease barrier. It's playing defense for your whole garden, and it never asks for a thing in return. Number 6, dead, lifeless soil with no earthworms. Dig a hole in a struggling garden and you'll often find the same thing: hard, pale, compacted dirt with barely a worm in sight. Healthy soil is supposed to be alive, crawling with earthworms and teeming with beneficial microbes. When it's not, your plants struggle no matter how much you fertilize. Grass clippings are like a dinner bell for soil life. Earthworms don't eat living grass, but they absolutely love decomposing organic matter, and a layer of breaking down clippings is exactly the buffet they are looking for. As the clippings rot, worms come up to feed, then drag that material down into their burrows, tunneling and aerating the soil as they go. Charles Darwin himself was obsessed with earthworms, calling them one of the most important creatures in the history of the world for the way they build fertile soil. And they earn it. Having thousands of worms in your beds is like running thousands of tiny tillers day and night, loosening compacted ground, mixing nutrients, and leaving behind castings that are pure plant food. Research backs this up, and a steady supply of short grass clippings has been shown to boost both earthworm counts and the overall microbial life in the soil. More worms and more microbes mean better aeration, better drainage, and better nutrient cycling. So while you sleep, that free bag of clippings is quietly hiring an entire underground workforce to rebuild your soil from the ground up. Number 7, disappointing potato harvests. If you've ever grown potatoes, you know the gamble. You plant them, you wait all season, and then you dig, hoping for a treasure chest of spuds, but often turning up a disappointing handful. And half of what you do find is green and inedible because it poked up into the sunlight. Here's a trick that solves both problems at once. Potatoes form their tubers along the buried portion of their stems, which is why gardeners hill them, piling material around the stems as they grow so the plant produces more potatoes. And one of the best materials for that job is grass clippings. Instead of hilling with heavy soil, wait until your plants are about 1 foot tall, then pile a thick layer of clippings around the base, covering the stems and leaving just the tips poking out. As the plants grow, keep adding more. Gardeners who do this report their potato plants shooting up remarkably fast, some reaching nearly 5 feet tall before flopping over. But the real payoff comes at harvest. There's no back-breaking digging and no risk of stabbing your spuds with a fork. You simply roll back the mat of decomposed grass and find clean, uniform potatoes sitting right there on the surface, ready to pick up by hand. The clippings block the light that turns potatoes green, hold in moisture, and smother weeds, all while the leftover compost enriches the bed for next spring. Number 8. Roots cooking and lettuce bolting in the heat. Summer heat is brutal on a garden, and not just above ground. When the sun hammers bare soil, the temperature in the root zone can spike to levels that literally stress and stunt your plants. For cool weather crops like lettuce and spinach, that heat is a death sentence, and it triggers bolting, where the plant suddenly shoots up a flower stalk, turns bitter, and becomes inedible almost overnight. A layer of grass clippings works like natural air conditioning for the soil. By shading the surface and insulating the ground beneath, the clippings keep the root zone noticeably cooler and buffer it from the wild temperature swings between the heat of the day and the cool of the night. Roots stay comfortable, and comfortable roots grow deeper and stronger. For your leafy greens, this can be a game changer. By keeping the soil cool and the moisture steady, grass clippings help prevent that dreaded bolting, and gardeners have found it can extend their lettuce and spinach harvests by several weeks, squeezing more crisp, sweet leaves out of a season that would otherwise have gone bitter. And it's not just cool season crops that benefit. Tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, and squash all appreciate roots that aren't baking. That temperature stability keeps the whole plant less stressed, which means more energy going into growing fruit instead of just surviving the heat. It's a quiet, invisible fix, but your plants feel it every single day. Number 9. Back-breaking work, turning lawn into garden. Say you want to expand your garden and carve a new bed out of the lawn. The traditional way is miserable. Hours of digging, slicing, and prying up stubborn chunks of sod until your back gives out, or worse, dousing everything in chemical weed killer. But there's a lazier, smarter method that puts your grass clippings to work: sheet mulching, sometimes called lasagna gardening. The idea is beautifully simple. Instead of digging out the grass, you smother it. Mow the area low, lay down a base layer of plain cardboard or newspaper right over the existing lawn, and then pile organic material on top. Grass clippings are a perfect nitrogen-rich layer for the job. Alternate your green clippings with brown materials like dried leaves or straw, keeping the grass layers thin so they don't mat. Then you do the hardest part of all, nothing. You just walk away and let nature take over. Over the next several months, the cardboard and mulch smother every blade of grass and weed underneath, while the whole stack slowly composts itself down into rich, crumbly soil. No tilling, no chemicals, no aching back. When it's ready, you've got a brand new garden bed that's not just weed-free, but actually loaded with beneficial fungi, bacteria, and nutrients. Better soil than you started with. Extension services across the country recommend this exact method, so the clippings you'd have bagged up can literally build you a whole new garden, all while you sit back and let them do the labor. Number 10. A compost pile that just won't break down. Almost everyone who tries composting hits the same wall. You dutifully toss in your leaves, your cardboard, your dead plants, and months later you peek in and it's all just sitting there, cold, dry, and stubbornly refusing to turn into the black gold you were promised. So what's missing? Almost always, the answer is nitrogen. A good compost pile needs a balance of browns and greens. Browns are the dry, carbon-rich stuff: straw, dead leaves, paper, cardboard. Greens are the moist, nitrogen-rich materials that act as the fuel. And grass clippings are one of the best greens you can possibly add. That shot of nitrogen from the clippings is what fires up the whole process. It feeds the beneficial microorganisms doing the decomposing, and as they multiply and go to work, they generate real heat, heating the pile to temperatures that break everything down far faster. A dead, cold pile suddenly becomes a warm, active, steaming compost engine. The key is balance. Dumping in a giant heap of wet clippings all at once will create a slimy, smelly, oxygen-starved mess. Instead, add them in reasonable amounts and mix them well with your brown materials. Turn the pile now and then to keep air moving through it. Do that, and those clippings will transform a stalled-out compost heap into a fast, hot, hard-working one, turning your yard and kitchen scraps into premium soil in a fraction of the time. Number 11. Plants that need a nutrient boost right now. Sometimes mulch is too slow. You've got a bed of hungry leafy greens or a plant that's clearly struggling, and you need to get nutrients into it fast, not weeks from now, as clippings slowly decompose. This is where you turn your grass into a liquid, and it feels a little like magic. It's called grass clipping tea, and don't worry, there's no boiling or teapots involved. Grab a bucket, fill it about 2/3 of the way with fresh clippings. Then top it off with water, rainwater, or non-chlorinated water is ideal. Cover it loosely to keep the mosquitoes out and let it steep. Give it a stir each day. As the grass sits in the water, it releases its nitrogen and potassium directly into the liquid. In just a few days, sometimes as little as 3, the water turns a rich amber color, and you've brewed yourself a potent, fast-acting, completely free liquid fertilizer. Strain out the grass bits, and it's ready to use. Pour it around the base of your plants for a quick boost, diluting it for young or delicate plants and using it stronger on established ones. It's especially effective on nitrogen-hungry, leafy greens like spinach, lettuce, and kale, and on plants that are blossoming or setting fruit. Just remember the golden rule again: only from untreated grass. 1 bucket, a few days of patience, and your lawn hands you a jug of liquid plant food that would have cost you real money at the store. Number 12, soil that crusts over and washes away. Here's a problem most gardeners never even name, even though it's silently sabotaging them. Every time rain hits bare soil, 2 bad things happen. First, the pounding droplets compact the surface and seal it into a hard crust that water can't soak through. So instead of sinking in, the rain runs off and takes your precious topsoil with it. Second, that compaction squeezes the life out of the ground your roots are trying to grow in. Grass clippings solve this quietly and completely. A layer of clippings cushions the soil from the impact of the raindrops, breaking their force before they ever hit the ground. Instead of hammering the surface into a crust, the water trickles gently through the mulch and actually soaks in where you want it. That means better water infiltration, less runoff, and dramatically less erosion, which matters even more if any part of your garden is on a slope. Underneath, the benefits keep stacking up. By protecting the soil structure and feeding all that worm and microbe activity we talked about earlier, the clippings help keep the ground loose, crumbly, and aerated instead of hard and compacted. Extension research even notes that returning clippings nudges more carbon into the soil over time, building richer organic matter year after year. So while it looks like nothing is happening, that thin blanket of grass is armoring your garden against every storm, holding your soil in place, drinking in the rain, and quietly making the ground healthier with every downpour. Number 13, dirty, mud-splattered fruit and veggies. There's nothing more disappointing than growing a beautiful crop of strawberries all season, only to have them ruined by resting on wet, muddy soil. The berries rot where they touch the dirt, and the ones that survive come out grimy and speckled with mud. The same goes for low-hanging tomatoes, cucumbers, and squash that sprawl across the ground. A layer of grass clippings fixes this instantly. By covering the bare soil with a clean, dry cushion, the clippings give your fruit something soft and dry to rest on instead of cold, wet mud. Strawberries stay clean and dry, which means less rotting and less waste, and a whole lot less rinsing at harvest time. And remember that splash effect we talked about with disease? The same principle keeps your produce cosmetically clean. When rain hits bare soil, it flings mud up onto your lower fruit and leaves. The mulch layer absorbs that impact, so your harvest comes out looking like it belongs in a magazine instead of caked in grit. It even helps your paths and work areas. Spreading clippings over muddy walkways between beds gives you a drier, cleaner place to kneel and step, so you're not tracking mud all over the garden and into the house. It's a small thing, but it's the kind of everyday convenience that makes gardening more pleasant. One more quiet win from a bag of grass you were about to throw away. So the next time you finish mowing and reach for that trash bag, stop and think about everything that free bag of clippings can do. From feeding your soil to watering your plants to guarding against disease, it's one of the best gifts your garden will ever get, and it costs you nothing. Give one of these a try this week and see for yourself. If this helped you, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a tip. Thanks for watching.